I think that's another bombshell tied to the whole reincarnation structure that's been put in place here. But I think that the more I reflect on this and think about the raw reality of what reincarnation means, it's like, as you've said, and I just want to emphasize, being stopped in our tracks, being forced to go through a reset because we cannot be trusted to make the right decisions and not go off completely in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and of course it'll be milder and milder the more advanced you are.
Right.
And the deviation should be less and less and less and less. But unless you've ascended, you aren't yet ready to avoid the cycle of reincarnation. What these experiences are designed to do is pressure you, the mind, and you, the soul, towards you, the spirit. The natural way in this solar system and beyond is not to be in the prison of reincarnation. We need to die and reincarnate again, because in that process of dying, we again connect up to our higher consciousness and can be directed by it again. If we were directed by it all the time here, we wouldn't need this process at all.
One of the questions that people often ask is, why do we forget? Why don't we remember the experiences we've had in the past, or the lessons that we may have learned, or at least the agreements that we may have made or planned with our higher self when we've been on the other realm between our lives?
First thing I'd say is,
hello and welcome back to the Spiritual Freedom Show with Richard Lawrence. My name is Darren Ball, and this is the podcast helping you to awaken your chakras, to unlock your psychic powers, and to discover true spirituality. Is it true? Is Earth really a prison planet? Is reincarnation a trap? And was it created with the sinister motive of keeping us all in suffering? I can't wait to get into the show with you, so stick around.
Richard.
Darren.
So the idea for this show actually came out of another show that we did a few weeks ago, where you actually casually said something in passing that really struck me, also struck our listeners.
Right.
So I just had to bring it back.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of people talk about karma and reincarnation, and we kind of have a lot of the how, but rarely do they address why they exist in the first place. I mean, why do we have karma? And would it be surprising to learn that reincarnation wasn't the norm? Maybe we can start with karma, because we have in Dr. King this outstanding revelation about karma, a statement that he made about it, which goes right to the heart of why we have karma in the first place. I'd love to get your take on it. So,
yes. Yeah.
So maybe I can read this out.
Before you do, what you made me think there is it's like a prisoner in a prison. And to the prisoner in the prison, that's the life they know. And they occasionally think about what it must be like for people outside. But for the people outside, they're looking at the people in the prison and thinking, wonder what it's like in the prison. And it's the natural way in this solar system and beyond is not to be in the prison of reincarnation. We need it. We've been put there because we need to be in it, because it's the only way that we can be trusted, inverted commas, to evolve correctly, is the bottom line. But really, once we break free from that prison, I mean, in the right way, at the right time, we'll see it for what it is, which is a limited state which we shouldn't have ever really needed in the first place.
Yeah, and I think a nice little teaser for what's to come on the show here, which for me was a massive revelation. I never even considered the fact that it was not the norm.
Yeah, because we are used to prison life, so we don't. This is our norm.
Yeah, literally, it's like I couldn't have even thought about something outside of it.
Yeah.
But let me share this quote from Dr. King, and then I'd love to dive into it. So he says this. He says, karma is pressure towards conformity. It is pressure directing you, the mind, and you, the soul, towards you, the spirit. And I'd love you to just, if you can break this down for us.
I think this is outstanding. And I will say that the Lord Buddha himself, in an encounter or a meeting that Dr. King had with him in 1978, because Lord Buddha is on Earth. We've talked about that quite some depth.
Check out the previous show.
Check out the show.
Yeah.
He did tell him that this was an even greater statement than he, the Lord Buddha, ever made when he was incarnate. And as I've said before, when he was incarnate, I believe he was absolutely brilliant. And I was staggered by his brilliance when I really started to tune into it through reading into the Akashic records a bit. How brilliant he was, and how much he knew, and how much he understood us. Real psychological understanding of the human condition, which he solved. He solved it. But he made that compliment to Dr. King. And to come to your point, it's pressure towards conformity, karma. Now that is, conformity is not conformity with conventions of mankind, of course.
Yeah, gotcha.
It's conformity with our higher selves, conformity with divinity, which is linked to our higher selves. We all have a divine spark. This is the best news you'll ever get on any radio show or any podcast in the world. And if your podcast hasn't shared this news with you, it's lacking.
And keep listening.
And this is the news. We have within us a divine spark. We have within us unlimited potential. This is wonderful. This is total liberation, just that knowledge alone. But we don't conform to the guidance, the emanations which come from it. We have lost contact, as we said in the previous show, with our first aspect, our primary aspect, our higher consciousness. I will say this, though, talking of karma and reincarnation, I must quickly say this, and we're going to come on to the other realms, but on the other realms, which is where we go when we die, if they're higher realms, it is much easier to have contact with our first aspect than it is here. And let's come back to that, because it's a very important point. And I think some people on the higher realms, if I may say this, look down and think, well, when I come back, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and so on. And they can see it very clearly because they're in much closer liaison with their souls, if you want to use that word. That's another word for it. When they get back here and there's a less of a connection, to do X, Y, and Z that they were planning to do is much more difficult. And on the whole, we don't fulfill our destinies, which were given to us by our souls, not by our lower minds, our souls. And so therefore we need to die and reincarnate again, because in that process of dying, we again connect up to our higher consciousness and can be directed by it again. If we were directed by it all the time here, we wouldn't need this process at all. Anyway, coming back to this statement, karma is pressure towards conformity to our higher selves, is what it means. And then this is brilliant. It is pressure. So he's described the nature of karma, what these experiences are designed to do. It is pressure directing you, the mind, and you, the soul, even at that level, towards you, the spirit. You know, on the whole, our soul would be like the closest reflection we could ever have of the spirit. There are rare exceptions in the history of humanity, and I'm diverting here a bit, but for a point of illustration, where even the soul can get corrupted by wrong thought. It's a terrible thing that has happened. And so then it needs to be pressurized back to you, towards you, the spirit. I'm talking here only about the darkest forces, an entity which was often called the devil, for example, or Satan, which has been transmuted now. But that entity was a person originally, a terrestrial person. But you know, we've been told by cosmic intelligences, there's only one sin, and that is ignorance. So that entity and any real powerful dark force could be brilliant, and it was brilliant, but it's also the most ignorant person on earth because it's the greatest sin. But anyway, coming back to this, so karma is pressure towards conformity. And you know, I've come across a number of people who've had bad experiences, we would call bad experiences, because there's a big mistake people can make. Actually, an English football manager at one time basically thought, it seems, that people who have difficult lives, maybe through being injured or not well physically or impaired physically or something, were obviously people who'd sinned before and so on. It's much deeper than that. Sometimes they could be a much better person. They could be a much more advanced person, but they're taking on that limitation. In fact, Dr. King once said, as a matter of fact, when you're about to go through a high initiation and move to a higher level, sometimes because you are then at a higher level, you, the soul, choose to take on difficult karma. So you can't judge by that at all. But I've come across a number of people who've told me that through bad experiences, difficult experiences of health, of mental pain, even some have said breakdowns and different conditions, through that they found their purpose in life. Hopefully, it's not the best way to do it, by the way. You know, we should be able to find our purpose in life without having to go through terrible suffering. But even if we are going through suffering, If we can find the reason, I keep coming back to this, and I'll never forget a woman listening to a radio show I did in Piccadilly Radio in Manchester who had decided to take her life. And we were talking about karma. And a light came on in her room. She heard these words about karma, and she decided to live. It's a liberating force. It's a good force. People think, oh, karma, it's going to be bad. But even the painful experiences, if we can see into their purpose, it's very difficult to do. We can have, and this is really tough, gratitude for experience. So we can have gratitude when everything's going great. Have it when it isn't. And this is a big key. It's a big key to advancement.
That's a very profound point. And I think what's also interesting there, so directing you, the mind, you, the soul, towards you, the spirit. So can we talk about the spirit part there?
So the mind has drifted away from its soul direction, unless we're listening to our intuition. Let me be positive here. Let's say it's absolutely possible and completely attainable for us to gain contact with our soul, to enter soul consciousness here in the here and now on this physical realm. So let's not say it isn't. Let's not think it isn't. It is. We have to do various things, with the most important of which is service to all for no personal reward, and other spiritual practices and so on. But it can be done, and when it is done, the thing then is to remain in tune with or act in the light of that contact in life. In one of the interviews I did recently on another podcast, I was asked, I was told actually, you can be in samadhi while riding a bike. Or the person asked me didn't necessarily believe that. He said he'd heard this. People say this. And I actually did not respond very strongly. But I could say actually it's not. It wouldn't be safe and it wouldn't be possible because you need to be still. But no, you can't enter samadhi while you're riding a bike. But what we can do is live in the light of that samadhic state. And the samadhic state, you are bathing your mind in the soul. So it is pressure directing you, the mind, and you, the soul, towards you, the spirit. And of course, the spirit is that part which is not even manifest.
Yeah, actually, because in the descriptions that are given about what meditation really is, it talks about bathing the soul in the light of the spirit, doesn't it? And this is actually a description of that happening in our whole lives, and over many lives, not just in that moment. And I think it's also interesting, just relating it back to the point you made about what happens between our lives and the counsel that we get, that helps us to plan our next life with the benefit of that connection with our own higher self.
Well, can I just sort of flesh out something you said earlier? And this is the Master Aetherius. It's in 1956. He said, "You are the judge and the jury,
There you go, yeah.
You have been made like this specially. It is the great safety valve. If this were not so, certain of you would have destroyed creation. This negatization of the plan of the divine architect could not be allowed to take place, so self-judgment was imposed as a guarantee of continuance." So you might say destroyed creation. And I think by that he means destroyed the process of creation, which has to follow certain laws. And these laws are framed by the supreme lords of karma, certainly in this galaxy. And those laws are things that, we would have transgressed so much that we are forced, through the plan of the divine architect on this earth, to have, as he says, self-judgment was imposed as a guarantee of continuance. That self-judgment takes place when we die. We go to the halls of self-judgment. We judge ourselves, and our soul, our higher consciousness, then allocates the lessons we need in our next life. So the other realms where people go when they die, and there are 6 of them, and there are 4 lower ones. Sadly, they shouldn't exist, the 4 lower ones, but they do. We go there. They're realms of waiting, you might say. They're realms of desert. We go where we deserve to go. So if we are a more spiritually minded person, we'll go to a higher realm where it'll be much easier to access our soul consciousness, where soul repression, which is one of the biggest problems on planet Earth among human beings, is soul repression. And most people don't even know it, which is even worse. that it becomes less pronounced. People do follow the conscience, the intuition, the soul, the inner still small voice within much more. Then they have to reincarnate and come back here and do it here. And that's a real testing time. It's a very, very important realm, this realm we're on now. Extremely important. We're all thrown together. It's not a realm of desert. You can have Gandhi and Hitler in the same century. You know, you can have great beings and evil beings and a lot in between, all in a melting pot here. And great experience can be gained in a way it can't be gained on the other realms. Certain things you can do on the other realms, we certainly can't do here. But this is, and the more advanced realms, they know this. And they wait their time. And they also, I believe, on the highest realms, know that it's not as easy as they might think, that coming back here and operating here requires them to be equipped in various ways. And they will pick their time to do so. And I'm talking here about the highest realms. Because on the very highest realms, they might even only have one life left to incarnate before they ascend. There won't be too many people like that, but I can name one, which is the Master Chang Fu. And there are no doubt others. Now, those individuals, in my opinion, I believe, they will be very careful because they won't want to make one mistake. Because that's the difference between ascension and cosmic consciousness. You can enter a deep state of consciousness as a flawed individual. I'm a very flawed individual. I've made many mistakes. When you're going to ascend, you can't make any mistakes of any note at all. And if you do make them, you're going to have to correct them in that life, not in the next one. You know, a lot of people they think, oh, well, I'll get away with this, and they pass on. You don't get away with it. You just have to come back, and then karmic pressure will be applied to you towards conformity of you, the mind, to you, the soul, and you, the spirit.
You know, now that you bring in the reincarnation aspect again, you know, one of the questions that people often ask is, why do we forget? Why don't we remember, you know, the experiences we've had in the past, or the lessons that we may have learned, or at least the agreements that we may have made or planned with our higher self when we've been on the other realm between our lives? What would you say?
Well, first thing I'd say is simple answer: we don't deserve to. The point is, we've got to gain those experiences under these conditions. It's not a question of going off and sort of getting, you know, this is what you need to do, and we learn, okay, well, I'll do that then. It's much deeper than that. We have to go through experiences, and we have to go from a point of limitation. You know, there's a great saying, actually, in a transmission from Saturn. There are very few transmissions from Saturn. And there's a quote which is something like this: you have to return to the river wherein you fell. And you don't sort of get dried off, and then, you know, think you've got to go back to the river wherein you fell. And that's the state you're in. You have to return to that state that you have deserved to be in, because only then will you transmute it.
Yes, that's the key of it.
That's the key of it.
That's the key.
You've got to transmute it. You've got to change it. There's actually, although I don't think he understood it at all, I think I've got here somewhere a quote by Carl Jung, actually. Here it is. He said this: one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but making the darkness conscious.
Wow, that's
yeah, it is. I think it means more than he began to understand, because bear in mind, they only knew about the psychologists generally talk about conscious and unconscious, not superconscious and subconscious. That's the answer to your question, actually. You come back here to make the darkness conscious. So that means not having full memories. You might have more memories, and as you advance, you will remember. You will remember past lives. You will remember, I mean, sometimes, and I certainly believe this happened to me, and I'm so sure I'm not the only one, you can have a destiny which is carved out at a certain time, and you're reborn to fulfill that particular destiny, and then it gets changed after you are born because of certain cosmic interventions or changes to the plan. And what is required of you could be the same essential lessons will have to be learned, and the same essential abilities will have to be used, but it could be in a somewhat different way. So this is the importance then of not just having a blueprint, even if you could do that, which you just reel off in your next life. It's much deeper. It has a deep level at every level, emotional, the physical, as well as the mental and spiritual.
I think what's interesting about this point that you're making here about needing to come back here and demonstrate it under these conditions is kind of reminds me of a quote that we shared by the Master Aetherius on a previous show about this process of sensitization,
Yes.
which leads to evolution, and that needing to happen through experience.
Yes.
Because it's quite confusing. Like, why do we have to be under these conditions even? Is it that these are the lessons that we have not yet learned, and this is what we have not yet transmuted or sensitized ourselves
I think
to?
we have to remember the purpose
Yeah.
of evolution, the purpose of karma. Actually, Saint Guling in the 12 Blessings, he describes it as a law of inevitability. He actually calls that I think a descriptive term for it.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
This is the law of inevitability, which is a descriptive name for karma. And there are certain things which they're going to happen. And we can't escape from them. Otherwise, if we could just reincarnate and do what you're kind of suggesting there in a way, you're not suggesting it, but you're putting it to me, we would be avoiding our lessons. We would avoiding the inevitability of the lesson. Now, this isn't to punish us. It's because it's the only way we're going to evolve, is come back into that situation with those limitations. Now, this doesn't mean to say you can't remember. I mean, I personally remember, broadly speaking, what my destiny was going to be in this life. I was born before the Aetherius Society was founded. And never mind changed, and the plan and the cosmic plan changed. And I never expected to end up as it were, one of Dr. King's right-hand men, closest friends, and involved probably as much, if not more than anyone, in the plan for the future of his society with him. I think many things changed. And certain priorities changed after I was born. I'm just giving myself as an example. This could apply to others.
Yeah.
So it's not just coming back and having a blueprint and then say, oh, this is what I've got to do, and working through it like some job. It's gaining the experiences we need. That's what it's about. And through gaining those experiences, transmuting the blockages, coming back to it, within us, to raise the natural forces upwards so that we can, as the Master Aetherius went on to say, actually, become the servants of the higher self within us.
Beautiful statement.
Which is another way of saying what Dr. King said, pressure towards conformity.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's amazing. It's all different ways of explaining the same essential truth and the same.
But again, I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. What I love about the Spiritual Freedom Show, and what I love more broadly about the Aetherius Society, is that questions are answered about the why, and not just the how. And for example, let's take the other realms where we go when we die. And we mentioned this, and they're realms of waiting, they're realms of desert. We go where we need to go until such a time as we're ready to come back. And the more advanced, I believe, this is my opinion I'm giving now, people on the highest realms are much more aware of the difficulties of coming back here. And also of the need to get it absolutely right. I think they have seen people fail. They've seen people fail on the path. They've seen people sent here with certain destinies who have not accomplished those destinies. I'm sorry to put it down like that, but it's very true, I believe. And they don't want to do that. They want to get it all right and come back, especially the most advanced of them, because they are preparing for their ascension. And they can't afford to make little errors or, have a thing which is pretty good but not completely good. They achieved their job, but they made those mistakes as well. That's not the kind of life some of them plan to have next time. So they want to get it all completely right. But the other realms, and this is a big point, shouldn't be used in an ideal world in the way they are used. The moment they are used for this purpose, and it's necessary, and it's within the divine law, and that's the way it is, and that's the way it should be. But if we were more advanced, We wouldn't, number one, as we've said already, need to reincarnate.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't need to die. We wouldn't need to go to the other realms for that purpose. The other realms would still exist, though. What would they be? They'd be locations for higher aspects of our consciousness now. Not places we go to when we die.
Yeah.
Higher aspects of our soul consciousness, our primary aspect, would dwell on those realms while we're also physically dwelling here, and there'd be no division. There wouldn't be two entities operating independently. Be one entity, as you have on a planet like Mars, operating in those realms and also operating on the physical realm at the same time, in complete unity within itself. That's how it should be, but we're not ready for that.
I think that's another bombshell about, tied to the whole reincarnation structure, if you don't like, that's been put in place here. But I think just, the more I reflect on this and you just think about the raw reality of what this reincarnation means, it's like, as you've said, and I just want to emphasize, being stopped in our tracks, being forced to go through a reset because we cannot be trusted to continue to make the right decisions and not go off completely in the wrong direction and snowball actually into a terrible state.
Yeah, and of course it'll be milder and milder the more advanced you are.
Right.
And the deviation should be less and less and less and less. But unless you've ascended or you aren't yet ready to avoid the cycle of reincarnation, which means that there are limitations within you. I mean, you might have gone off by not being a bad person per se or doing any harm to anyone, but by focusing too much on your own development instead of service to others. That could be a lesson for a more advanced person who wasn't yet ready to ascend, for example.
Yeah, that's an interesting, very subtle one, I guess, that you'd come to. The other, this is potentially related, but I'm not entirely sure. But we have talked briefly in the past about some of the people that are mentioned in the Old Testament, for example, and the ages of them.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, which are extraordinary.
Methuselah and
like 900 years,
Enoch.
800 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just made me wonder, if this was a different time upon Earth, potentially pre-Atlantis or even right after, what may have been different about karma of people as a whole that may not have required us to reincarnate as often, with such a
Well,
short
there are
lifespan.
certain births reported in the Mahabharata of individuals, and one was Draupadi, for example, who weren't yet ready to ascend and were specifically told that at the end of the Mahabharata about her and some others. One of them was, but she wasn't. Most of them weren't. So we know she wasn't an ascended soul. And yet she was a virgin birth. She was born through a flame. It was a flame ritual of some kind. She was born in that way, which will happen in the New Age again, through the flame of the Logos of this planet. In her case, this may or may not have been through the flame of the Logos. It's not described as such in that text. It's described as a fire ritual. But there is a link between fires. I believe there's a link between all fire and the sun. I suppose that's obvious, really. But I mean at a deeper level, at a spiritual level. And I've had an experience of that very recently myself, which I found quite amazing. And without going into it, the whole thing, I was, doing some practices, and by the way, I'm not worthy of this at all, and I don't think some of these things would be happening to me if it wasn't for the task I'm privileged to have, thanks to Dr. George King. I do want to say that because there's nothing special about me whatsoever, but I have an unusual task, and I think that would be a reason why some of these experiences are being given to me. But this one was an experience with what I took to be a fire diva. Divas can be very large, they're natural forces, or quite small. They can be many feet in height, but generally often, like if you light a match or something and you're able to see, not that I've had many experiences, I have had a sighting of a Kundalini diva who went in on a previous show. There's a great book actually by Jeffrey Hodgson, It's an old book, but it's a great one, recommended by Dr. King, actually. I think it's recommended in the Nine Freedoms, I believe, called The Kingdom of the Gods.
Yeah.
I actually met Geoffrey Hodgson in his latter years in New Zealand.
Oh, right.
Yeah, which was quite an honour, really, to meet him. He was a great theosophist in his day. But this particular experience was, I believe, a fire diva, and it was about 4 feet in height, I would say.
Okay.
Quite a substantial, and the colouring, I did check afterwards in the Geoffrey Hodgson book, was fairly close to some of the depictions that he made of divas. Not exactly, but fairly. But not, the height was a bit different. But anyway, it was about that height. It had colours from red through to orange to yellow, and as it went higher, in the form of this person or this entity, I should say, it got brighter and brighter and brighter until you had something where you'd expect a face to be, which was very, very difficult to look at.
You mean not just because it was literally bright?
Because it was so bright, even with your eyes closed, you wanted to blink your, as in metaphorically, at least, blink your eyes. So you couldn't detect any features. It was far too bright. And all that happened was that it, I say all that happened, what happened was it emitted a beam of light to my heart center.
Wow.
Which then traveled upwards of its own volition, it seemed, upwards. It was a lesson in raising consciousness to me.
Wow.
But my point being, though, I came away with a definite conclusion that this, as I suppose is obvious really, all fire, all elements like that are connected in some way to the sun. As a matter of fact, everything is connected to the sun because we are solidified sunlight.
Yeah.
But this is a great force and a great power that can be radiated. And in this particular case, it was to raise consciousness. And it was a very overpowering. So, yeah, so there will be a link, I suppose, is what I would just say, between even the flame of the Mother Earth and the sun. There must be a link. It is her flame, absolutely her flame, but she herself was created by the sun. The Mother Earth was created. And in that violet flame, by the way, there is a great secret. I know I'm going off topic a bit here, but it's something I've been thinking about, and it is alluded to, again, by Saint Guling. Let's not pass over the introductions to the blessings. And this one by Saint Guling is the beginning of the 6th blessing. And he describes really a version of the practice of the presence, which again is to take consciousness upwards to the golden sphere. And as you know, I've always thought that, I believe for some time, that the practice of the presence is embryonic cosmic consciousness. That if we really did it correctly, fully, we could enter that state doing it. So Saint Guling says, this should be an illustration to all that if you use great power of violet flame properly, you can raise your consciousness and also do much good to your body and your mind and your emotions and your etheric and your soul. That's interesting, isn't it? Even your soul.
Yeah.
And he says then, practice many times, and one day perfection like a sun will dawn. Then will you rejoice, for you will have found the great secret. Treat this in a sacred manner, for it is very great, most holy practice. So he's talking there about a great secret connected to the violet flame. And I don't think, even if I was to say what I believe that secret is, it would make much difference, because I think people, you have to experience it, really. But I do believe that through the practice of the violet flame, under the right conditions, one could raise Kundalini, which must be connected to that flame. Again, it's all back to fire, source and flame, and that I believe to be the great secret. But it's one that can only come through realization, not through me saying it or anybody thinking it. That's just my opinion I'm giving. It's more than an opinion, but I'm presenting it as my belief. People will have to find that. But again, So going back, I've diverted from your question, I apologize, but these are some points I wanted to share with our viewers and listeners. But coming back to the old days you're talking about, the people I'm talking about, Draupadi and so on, were born as adults.
We got you.
And that's the way it will be. In the new age, there will be birth through the flame of the Logos, through the Mother Earth, as adults. It will no longer be necessary for us to gain the experience of childhood. That state of childhood, which we all go through, is an aberration. Absolutely rightly, people have increasing respect and care, hopefully, for children. They should be absolutely looked after. They should also be protected in every possible way. But there will come a day on this earth when there aren't any children at all. On other planets, there aren't children in the sense of that we have children. That's a result of procreation.
Maybe just a word on the other planets before we finish. I mean, clearly it seems from what we discussed today that this kind of system of reincarnation is, while maybe not unique to us on Earth, literally in terms of the whole galaxy or the universe, it's certainly something that has been set up because of our state of evolution.
Exactly.
And on the other planets, at least in our solar system, they don't have that.
No.
So they wouldn't be evolving through this reincarnatory process in the same way that we would.
No. I don't know of any planets where they have reincarnation. I mean, from what we've been told.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know.
There may be some, but we haven't been told of any that have that kind of system. It's a very limited thing. It's because of our involution. It's because we can't be trusted. And karma is very, very precise. There's an interesting statement here, actually, by Mars Sector 6. It was given at the Caxton Hall, the Council's decision. And Mars Sector 6 says that the law of God is perfect. It works perfectly and surely and fairly and without compassion. For it be too perfect to contain emotion. Now that's the use of a word, compassion. There is tremendous compassion in the very fact that karma exists at all, because it's designed to enable us to evolve. And then the lords of karma work, incessantly for our benefits. There's tremendous compassion in that regard. So this is the reference here is to a kind of he talks about emotion. There can't be any sort of come on, let's just let them go. It's a very precise and very exact thing or law which just has to take place. And this statement actually, which I don't believe Lord Buddha said, but is associated with Buddhism, to every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, is a very precise statement indeed. There's no sort of give or take. Dr. King comments on that a bit. He said, that's how karma works. It's absolutely, completely exact and absolutely, completely fair. With, I want to say, a vein of compassion, but not too much, because too much compassion and it could no longer be fair.
Interesting.
So these are very, people have a funny idea of it. It's not a punishment thing at all. It's a learning thing, and it's a kind of a reward. It's a reward, but not maybe the reward you want. It's the reward you need.
A beautiful way to end there about awareness or evolution and the true meaning of karma. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, Spiritual Freedom Show family, thanks for tuning into the show. Gosh, I was reeling after that episode and some of the information that Richard shared there. I had not considered that the system of reincarnation did not apply elsewhere, at least not on any other planets that we know of. And I had never read that extract from the Master Aetherius that the system of reincarnation had to be imposed on us, on the mass of humanity, basically because we could not be trusted to evolve in the correct way. And I think that it reveals that making a deeper connection with our own higher self and living in the light of that wisdom is one of the secrets of life. Because that is why we die, so that we can get the benefit of the influence of our own higher self between lives and return, as the Master from Saturn says, to that river wherein we fell, to those same conditions under the same limitations, so that we can demonstrate our mastery over that aspect of experience and integrate that into our consciousness. This is how we grow. This is how we become wise. This is how we evolve. And actually, it's one of the secrets to the why of creation as a whole. So it is a prison in a way, but it's only a prison which has been forged by our own wrong thought and action over the lives, not by some evil overlord. And when we begin to live in the light of our own higher self, which is what the system is designed to teach us, then we will walk the path to freedom. If you enjoyed that episode about karma and reincarnation, then do follow and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future episodes that can help you to awaken your chakras, to unlock your psychic powers, and to discover true spirituality. Now, if you're interested in more right now, I can recommend this show over here, which can help you to reconnect with your soul, especially when you're feeling spiritually stuck. Thanks for tuning into the show. We'll see you next time.